All right. Welcome to the January 10, 2024 School Committee meeting. Item 1.1, District Vision and Core Values. District Vision. The Barnstable Public Schools educates the whole child by creating a student-centered school culture that addresses students' physical, social, emotional, and academic needs by creating a safe and healthy learning environment in which all students are challenged, supported, and engaged. Core values. In Barnstable Public Schools, we value commitment, collaboration, and community. Commitment. We are dedicated to the continuous learning and growth for all. Collaboration. We work together while keeping student needs at the center of all decision-making. Community. We build strong, respectful partnerships that support student success. Item 1.2, statement by chair, video or audio recording of meeting. This school committee meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20, the chair must inquire whether anyone else is recording this meeting, and if so, to please make their presence known. All right. Item 2.1, highlights in education. Wet Fest at Barnstable United School. Welcome, Principal Wojciechowski.
Thank you so much for having me. Mrs. Ewald was also going to be here, but unfortunately she is under the weather. So you just have me. So the Wet Fest came to BUES at the beginning of December, and it's a great experience for our students. So it's sponsored by Barnstable County, AmeriCorps, and the Massachusetts Service Alliance, and it's managed by the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension, and it's facilitated by AmeriCorps Cape Cod. They're volunteers. It's an interactive method of teaching students the fundamentals of water in Cape Cod's unconfined sole source aquifer. So I have a little statement here from Mrs. Ewald that I want to read, and it's to the why it came to Barnstable United. So ever since Massachusetts adopted new science standards in 2016 and fifth grade got to study the water cycle, I wanted to bring the Wet Fest to Barnstable United. This program is very popular, and you have to apply a year in advance. Finally, during the summer of 2019, I was able to schedule this for our school. It was scheduled for March of 2020, and we all know how that went. Finally, in 2022, we were able to bring the Wet Fest to Barnstable United. And again, obviously, we brought it this year as well. So it's an interactive program brought to us by AmeriCorps Cape Cod and the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension. It begins with a skit involving a large toilet, contaminants, and a water wizard. I'll explain it in a second. In small groups, students visit over 20 hands-on stations. Favorite booths include Flush the Kids, Sea Turtle Rescue, Edible Aquifer, and the Bubble Booth. Students learn the fundamentals of water and Cape Cod's unconfined sole source aquifer. They come away with the true understanding of about how water impacts their daily lives and leave the festival with new ideas to save and protect water through simple personal actions. At the end of the program, they take a pledge to be a groundwater guardian. After years of teaching at a distance, many were skeptical that our students would be successful at such a hands-on program. We proved this wrong. These hands-on learning activities are just what students needed. All 370 of the fifth graders were engaged, learned about a very important concept, and had a lot of fun. And Mrs. Ewald would also like to thank the Enoch Cobb Grant for making this experience possible. So the first picture is now going to make a little bit more sense. A groundwater guardian, which looks like something either out of Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings. So that was really the opening skit, which kind of sets the tone or the learning objective for students as to why are they there, right? Like on one level, okay, it's something different. It's an in-school field trip, but why are we there? What is the purpose of protecting groundwater and why is it important? It's certainly a very timely thing in the town of Barnstable as we're in the middle of a giant sewer project, right? So it fits really well, but it's very much local in terms of what students can do. So they learn the basic about a septic system. So if you look up there on the slide, it looks like something a 3- and 4-year-old might play in, but it's a really good thing for students to do because unless their family has a new septic system installed, it's probably not something they think about a lot, right? In terms of, so how does it work and where does the waste go and what actually gets put back into the ground? So, it's interactive, they're crawling around, but they're also then learning about where does the waste go. So it looks like fun. I did not try it because I would not fit in one of the tubes and they would have needed to cut me out. So that was not good. So another thing we talk about is just where we are geographically on Cape Cod in terms of, all of the wildlife that we have and things that we may take for granted, but, why, whether it's sea turtles, whether it's shellfish, whatever it is, the cleaner water that we have, the better it is for our environment and all the animals and plants and everything in the environment. So, interactive, they race to protect sea turtles, make it a little fun by having them on a bouncy ball. You can see there we have a volunteer from the AmeriCorps. They all run it. The kids really like that because most of the AmeriCorps volunteers are recent college graduates in their early 20s. So it's like not somebody old and gray like me talking to them, but it's, a young, hip adult talking to them. So that's a really good thing. Let's see here. The next thing after the sea turtles, talking about really the basics of water in terms of from an atomic structure, how it's constructed. But again, AmeriCorps has figured out a way to make it fun using giant bubbles. They were not flying around the gym, which was good, but the kids had fun with that type of activity. So here's something that, is not as interactive, but it really goes to the learning that was able to take place at the Wet Fest and just seeing how pollution gets into the groundwater. And when I was there, I was actually watching this, maybe not at this one, but at another session, because we ran 4 sessions over 2 days for the students. But just thinking about, okay, dripping motor oil, dripping antifreeze, when the fertilizer that you put on your lawn, right? All those type of things, how like a big rainstorm like we had last night, it goes down into those grates that you might not think about where that water goes, but it goes somewhere and it goes into the groundwater. I know last year after the Wet Fest, my daughter came home and said, "Dad, you don't use fertilizer on the lawn, do you?" And I'm like, "Does it look like I use fertilizer?" I do not. I like weeds. It works very well. Dandelions are my friends. So, so they get to learn a lot in terms of how they can, as, 5th graders, make decisions that will positively impact, whether it's asking their parents about their fertilizer, but then hopefully, as they get older, they think, okay, wait, I have a house, I have a lawn, maybe I need to go organic because that's better for the groundwater. So there's just more photos of students doing that. And this whole thing was brought to us by the Cobb Fund and Steve Hesslinger. And I would once again like to thank him very much for providing this experience to all of our 5th grade students this year. What questions do you have?
Anybody have questions, comments? Jen?
Yeah, I think this is a great opportunity for kids to see how they can be they are a part of Barnstable and how they can continue to offer advice and counsel to their parents. I wonder if you guys might be interested in taking the next step, which is probably visiting the Hyannis water system. We have a state-of-the-art water system here in Hyannis that removes 100% of PFAS detected. We have the cleanest water in town, and it's really a state-of-the-art facility nationwide. Hans Kaiser would be the guy to see. It's a very interesting facility, and shiny and new. So, and we've all paid for it on the Hyannis water system. So, I'd be happy to help out.
Yeah, that'd be
Introduce
great,
you.
Jen.
Yeah.
If that'd be,
Yeah.
so you said Hans Kaiser?
Hans Kaiser. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
He's great.
Awesome.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. That sounds great.
Peter?
Back, Mike, a million years ago when I taught at your school, we brought this program in as well. It was a little different, but, and as a former oyster farmer, we used to get calls all the time on heavy rains, you're not working for a few days.
Yeah.
And, people say, why? Because it rained? And
It's all the stuff on the land that
you
goes
got it.
into the
Yeah,
water,
that's
right?
correct.
Thank you. Excellent presentation. Good job.
Thank you so
for,
much.
for being the representative.
Yeah, you would have been way better off with Mrs. Ewald, but
you weren't quite as good as Tara, but you know what? You did okay, Mike.
I'm nowhere near as good as Tara. I understand. Thank you guys so much, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Mike. Item 3.1, student envoy reports. Riley and Paloma.
Hi. Riley's a little sick right now. She's gonna try to get through it.
My voice has been a little in and out all day, so.
So we mentioned the Spirit Day at the last meeting, and that happened right like the Friday before break, and it was a success, especially like the karaoke. They did karaoke. It was a lot of fun. Apparently, I don't know who she is, but some girls smashed it, singing like "Girl on Fire" or something like that.
Some Alicia Keys song.
Some Alicia Keys song. She was really good. So that was an enjoyable experience, and I feel like it did really bring up the spirits, especially in this long winter period.
Tomorrow we have our showcase, and so a bunch of clubs, sports, and different organizations are all gonna show all the work they've been doing. This is really exciting, and it was really fun last year, and I'm just excited for it tomorrow.
DECA had I'm not in DECA. What? A conference. Yeah, I'm not in DECA, but they had a conference, and around 20 students were awarded for the business things, the business successes they had. There's a bunch of pictures of it. They all look very fancy. And then also, we had the regionals for our musical program, and they did really good, and they're moving on to All Cape now. Along with that, the bells at the high school are broken. But thankfully, Mr. Pai has stepped in doing bells by himself. He'll jump in on the mic and go ding dong, and then he'll say get to class, and he will say what block it is, which is really helpful because like 10 times a day you get asked what block is it? Like, where are we going next? I do that. I'm like, where am I going? And I get a little lost. And then FPS, which I do know a lot about because we're in FPS, we had our practice problem number 2, and February 9th is our qualifying problem, in which we all have 2 hours in order to solve a future scenario. And whoever gets the most points or qualifies will move on to states.
Yeah, and then internationals.
And then internationals. No, nationals first.
No, yeah.
Nationals, internationals, and that's in Indiana this year, I think, which is a nice change because usually it's at UMass Amherst. So we'll go somewhere else now. And that's pretty much today. That's pretty much it for today. Thank you. If you have any questions.
Thank you. So the BHS showcase starts at 5:30, correct?
Yeah.
5:30 until 7:30, I believe, tomorrow night. Open to the public.
Yes.
Yeah, and there will be babysitting too for younger kids.
We're babysitting.
Oh, right. So there's free childcare so that
So all parents are
everybody
welcome.
can come and not worry about leaving children at home.
Exactly.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any, Jen?
Yeah, I think the student who sang the Keys song, Alicia Keys song, is Angelia Spagnolo.
Yes.
Yeah, so her mom, Dorota, is employed at Barnstable Intermediate School now. I'm not sure where she is, but as a language specialist. So I saw it on Facebook because we're friends from years ago.
that's so
So
cute.
yeah, that was pretty amazing, I have to say. Excellent. So thank you for your contribution every meeting. It's great.
Thank you.
Peter? Mike? All right, thank you very much for coming and feel better.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Thanks.
Okay. Item 3.2, approve subcommittee for the purpose of soliciting and reviewing RFPs from potential consulting legal firm meeting minutes, December 6, 2023.
Move to approve subcommittee for the purposes of soliciting and reviewing RFPs from potential consulting legal firms meeting minutes for at 8:30 a.m. on December 6, 2023.
I'll second.
All right. Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
And motion carries. Item 3.3, approve subcommittee for the purpose of soliciting and reviewing RFPs for potential consulting legal firm meeting minutes, 2:30 p.m. on December 6, 2023.
Move to approve subcommittee for the purposes of soliciting and reviewing RFPs from potential consultant legal firms meeting minutes at 2:30 p.m. on December 6, 2023.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3.5, approve,
3.4.
3.4, approve subcommittee for the purpose of soliciting and reviewing RFPs for potential consulting legal firm meeting minutes on December 11, 2023.
Move to approve subcommittee for the purposes of soliciting and reviewing RFPs from potential consulting legal firms meeting minutes on December 11, 2023.
I'll second.
Having a motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 3.5, approve school committee meeting minutes, December 13, 2023.
Move to approve school committee meeting minutes for December 13, 2023.
Second.
Having a motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, item 3.7, school committee comments and
How about
subcommittee.
public comment?
Oh, whoops, sorry. Item 3.6, public comment. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and 30 minutes total. There will be no debate or action taken on public comment items. The committee will take items under advisement, or the individual will request an item to be placed on a future agenda. The chair will also allow public comment at his or her discretion during the meeting. Seeing no one for public comment is now closed. Item 3.7, school committee comments and subcommittee liaison reports. Jen, do you have anything today?
I don't. We haven't yet formed our.
Well, we're
met
meeting
for
probably next
subcommittee.
week at some point
Yeah.
for our subcommittee.
Yeah.
Thank you for sending the reminder.
Yeah, no
It was one of those things I kept thinking about it. Sarah reminded me the other day, or we talked about it.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to send something to Jen, and I just kept forgetting. So thank you for the
Yeah,
reminder.
That's okay. It's something I want to do. And then, do you want me to make a motion for the other subcommittee? Is that why you were asking me, or?
This is just if you have any comments.
No, I'm good. Thank
All
you.
right. Peter?
No, all set, Kathy.
Mike?
All set.
All right, so Subcommittee on Policy Revision, the next meeting is this Friday, January 10th at 1 p.m. via Zoom. And I have one other item to clarify, primarily for the public. Jen, can you, oh, it's not up there. All right, so there have been some postings on social media. So in accordance with policy, we have 4 policies that provide authority to school committee meeting members. Those are policy BBAA, policy BCA, policy BDB, and policy BHC. Those 4 policies provide the framework for how school committee members and how school committee has its authority and conducts its business. I would like to remind the public and the committee members that in accordance with policy BBAA, not only school committee members, but also the community should understand that currently the school committee does not communicate using any social media accounts. This includes recent postings related to the mascot. All communication occurs during school committee meetings, which are posted in accordance with open meeting law. The public is welcome to address school committee during public comment per policy BEDH, public comment at school committee meetings. Discussions and decisions of school committee are documented in the minutes, which are posted on the school committee page of the Barnstable Public Schools website. Any postings currently appearing on social media are not those of the Barnstable School Committee. Currently, there have been no specific instructions of the committee for any individual member to request input or action from the community on any matter other than those documented in school committee meeting minutes. For the public's knowledge, and again as a reminder to my fellow school committee members, Policy KDD states that district-wide communication is provided by the superintendent and building-specific communication is provided through the building principal. Policies KDD and BDB state the chair is the public spokesperson for the committee at all times, except as this responsibility is specifically delegated to others. And finally, policy BHC states that school committee members shall request information through the superintendent. The superintendent must be informed of any visits school committee members make to the schools for the purpose of informal interest, and these visits must be arranged through the building principal. Official visits by school committee members are only under school committee authorization. If anyone has any questions, Jen?
Where would the public find these policies?
All the policies are posted on the district's website, and I'm just shutting that off. There's a link right at the top page on the banner to policies and handbooks.
Yep.
And then big as life at the top is a link. You can also get to all the policy in the policy manual on the school committee homepage.
Right. I've seen it. I just wanted the public to know where to find it because the letters don't mean much if you can't attach it to something.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah. So thank you.
So, any other questions? All right. Next item is 3.8, Superintendent Reports. Sarah?
Thank you. Good evening. I want to congratulate and acknowledge our students in the Performing Arts program, as well as our faculty and staff, for two tremendous concerts the week before winter break, one by high school and one by intermediate school performers. They did a fantastic job, and we eagerly await our musicians in grade 5 and grade 4 who are going to be sharing their talents on the 17th and the 18th at Barnstable High School at 7 p.m. I am pleased to announce we'll hear more about the program of studies later this evening by Principal Friedman, but I did want to use the superintendent's report to announce something very exciting, which has been a topic of conversation at school committee meetings since I started. My first meeting, I was an audience member, June of 2022, related to the JROTC program. The United States Coast Guard has selected Barnstable High School as a host school for the new Coast Guard JROTC unit to be established in the upcoming 24-25 school year. And for those who have not followed this process, there was a presentation by a naval officer about the merits of JROTC back in June of 2022, and the committee and I and Ms. Friedman spent time researching JROTC programs across various branches, meeting with Coast Guard representatives, and surveying student interest. And following your authorization, we applied to become a host school back in September. The Coast Guard is expanding their JROTC programs, which is exciting. The other branches have had JROTC for some time, and we are excited to join. They will have 16 units in total starting this fall. There are 6 additional high schools being added this year. We are among that 6. Others include high schools in Oregon, Hawaii, Texas, and Florida. The JROTC Maritime courses will be advertised during the course selection process, and we've included them in the program of studies. And Coast Guard representatives will visit Barnstable High School in February to begin assisting us in developing the program, including the recruitment of teachers. So we're very excited about that. I think it's a really great addition to our Pathways programs. I wanted to follow up on school committee member Cullum's suggestion from the last meeting related to food waste and having it be donated across our community. It took a little bit of research just to understand our current practice. We participate in the National School Lunch Program. Food waste, upon talking with our Director of Food Services, the kitchen does try to keep to a minimum, and they've been operating in some ways to reuse food products as allowable by the Department of Education. As part of the lunch program, as Principal Milne had mentioned, students are required to take certain components, making it a reimbursable meal. This includes things like the main meal, in addition, fruit and milk. However, as it was noted, not all students eat all components of their lunch. So we do use share tables where students can place items that they do not want on these share tables at the end of lunch. Students can take things from the share tables that they do want. At the end of lunch, the items from the share table go into a basket from which the item can be served one more time after that. So that is part of the Department of Ed's rules. The Food Services Department encourages school nurses to take anything left over that may be available to students throughout the day, but yet there still may be items that could possibly be thrown out. So we wanted to make sure that it would be allowable, and it is, from the Department of Education to donate some items out of our school kitchens. So we had Dave contact the Department of Ed to identify what would be permitted. And it is likely fruit and maybe some milk, most likely from student meals. We checked with the Board of Health, who advised us against donating anything that would need temperature control. So there is the opportunity to make some donations related to fruit and other non-perishable items that may be donated. The connection with the HYCC is a logical one with BCIS, and certainly we can envision, and we've talked a little bit about other possibilities across the district. So we're working on the logistics and happy to share what we can beyond our school walls. Just wanted to clarify one thing about the showcase that I don't think came up. Super excited about it. It was a wonderful event last year to see so many wonderful things that are happening at the high school, including our course offerings, pathways, clubs, activities, and athletics. Again, as noted, this is open to the public, and it goes until 7 o'clock. So this is Thursday at the high school from 5:30 to 7 p.m. Come see where our students find their why. A couple regulatory pieces or compliance pieces that I wanted to mention related to the Department of Ed so that you and the community are aware. At the end of the month, during the week of January 29th, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's Office of Public School Monitoring is going to be conducting our tiered focused monitoring review. They visit districts and charter schools every 3 years to monitor compliance with federal and state special education, civil rights, and English language learner regulations. Activities of this review included a self-assessment over the past year. I want to commend our co-directors of special education, our director of English language education, and our executive director of SEL and student services who did the lion's share of work during this self-assessment, compiling documents and uploading them to the department. Following initial feedback on this documentation, we may have made some changes in our procedures and practices based on initial feedback. And then this year, the department does an on-site visit. There is an element of parent and guardian outreach by the department. They will be on site at the end of the month to interview district staff and administrators. They will review student records and conduct on-site observations. They typically hold an exit interview with the superintendent upon the conclusion of the visit, and they will preview some initial findings. Within approximately 60 days after the on-site visit, the chairperson will provide the district with a report with information about areas in which the district meets or exceeds regulatory requirements and areas in which the district requires assistance to correct or improve practices. So you'll be made aware, too, of what that report contains, and it is a public report as well that gets posted to the department's website. But it is typically helpful in terms of providing feedback to the district. And another thing that's coming up from the Department of Education and a regulatory component relates to the Student Opportunity Act. The SOA, as you know, was a major piece of legislation that came from an enormous commission's study on the adequacy and equitability of funding across Massachusetts. We are currently halfway through the rollout of this Chapter 70 funding. The increased funding came about due to the commission determining that the state was underfunding in key areas, including special education, providing for socioeconomically disadvantaged students, English language learners, mental health supports, and health insurance. The SOA Act requires districts to develop 3-year plans to demonstrate how the district aims to reduce educational opportunity gaps within its schools. The first 3-year plan was developed and approved during the pandemic. It was back in 2020, 2021, and has expired. In the subsequent years, there have been updates annually provided to the department, and Kristen and I completed that last year. This year, April 1st, 2024, our second 3-year plan will be due. Kristen and I have begun to develop the plan, starting with a kickoff webinar with the Department of Ed yesterday. As with the first plan, stakeholder engagement is an expectation. We'll be seeking input from our Special Education Parent Advisory Council, our English Learner Parent Advisory Council, school councils at our schools, educators, and families. It will be shared with you as a school committee, ultimately for your approval. Your vote is required. We will ultimately make the plan public on our website, and it will get submitted to the Department of Ed. So I anticipate this coming to you sometime in the March timeframe, but just wanted to preview the process for you in advance.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments? Jen?
Hi, thank you. The JROTC thing is an excellent opportunity, and I'm really excited that it's going to be in Barnstable. I think it will really find a lot of applicability in areas where we don't normally focus, and get some students interested in the future, which would be really great. And thank you for addressing the food. I don't know that it's waste as much as it is leftovers.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
yeah, I really appreciate that because it's a really big thing when there's so many food insecure families in our town. I did want to make sure we're not just focusing on the innovation school, but on other schools within the district as well, so that the HYCC might be a drop-off for the logical drop-off. But if, as I mentioned last meeting, if there's any introductions that need to be made to Jenny Wheeler at the Family Table Collaborative or the veterans or the shelter, I can certainly facilitate that if it's necessary. And I'm sure that Mark Els is in the loop on the HYCC thing at this point and will help with the fridge and the other things that are necessary. Mark and I missed our meeting this week, but I certainly will be sure to loop him in. Yeah, great. Thank you very much for addressing that. It's important. Appreciate it.
Peter, any
No, all
comments?
set.
Mike?
Thank you for the ROTC. I know how much work that was. Liz, I know you did a ton of work, like back last spring and then again, and then there's been multiple surveys, and just thank you very much for everything you've done to kind of get it up, and we kind of all kind of got it up and running, and then you folks, Sarah, you and Liz, you kind of got it across the line, so thank you very much, because I just think I'm a big personable pathways, so it's just another kind of different, but that's good. Different is good because it can hit a group of kids that we don't have any pathways that hit. So thank you very, very much for getting it across the line. I truly, truly, truly appreciate that. Thank you.
I'll be interested in hearing how many students initially register for that when you start doing the student schedules. Hopefully it will take off and be good. All right, item 3.9, Assistant Superintendent Report. Kristen.
Thank you. So a couple things for you tonight. First, I wanted to share with you that we are Going to be conducting some mid-year check-ins with our new teachers. So as we continue to find ways to stay connected with and support our newest educators, we'll be holding mid-year conversations with staff hired just this year. It's a new practice for Barnstable, but one that we anticipate will prove to be very valuable, particularly as we look to retain staff in Barnstable. These conversations, often called stay conversations, will provide us with valuable data and insights into the early experiences of our new educators, the positives, the challenges, the opportunities. In essence, what is Barnstable offering that will keep them in Barnstable? We have made this an optional, as this is kind of our first go through with this. We've made this an optional meeting for our new educators, just more in an effort to build trust and engagement related to these conversations. And hopefully we can build off of this experience and, they'll tell their friends that it was really a great experience and a great opportunity. So as of couple hours ago. We have 13 new educators who've expressed interest in participating in these one-on-one conversations that will be scheduled during the first 2 weeks of February. I'm anticipating that there will be more that will engage in this, but certainly it didn't feel like it was, given, again, this is our first time through, to make it a requirement, really making sure that people are comfortable sharing. We want to make it a really comfortable experience, and we've also talked about ways in which we can expand this to beyond our new educators into our more veteran staff in coming years or next year. Today, as you know, was a half-day in service. And while today's in-service professional development was largely planned by schools, it was school-based PD, there were two key district PD sessions offered this afternoon I thought I wanted to share with you. We had approximately 150 staff members, pre-K to 12, participate in the first of two sessions related to the new Massachusetts IEP form that will go into use next year. The first session served as an introduction to the new IEP. Key points covered during the PD session included a review of the similarities and differences between the current form and the new form, improved outcomes for students, anticipated challenges for implementing the new form, identifying supports required for successful implementation, and establishing next steps in the new IEP rollout process. They'll take all of that information from today, and that will help to develop out the second PD session that is scheduled for the April in-service, I believe April 3rd. The second key PD session offered today involved the educators, approximately 25 educators, 25 to 30, who will be piloting the two literacy programs that have been identified through the GLEAM grant. We had consultants from the two programs working with staff to prepare them to start the pilot, implementing the pilot materials on January 22nd. Pilot teachers were guided through the materials, exploring the various components, how to structure their lessons. The staff were split by group, by program, EL Education being one program, and Amplify CKLA the other. And within those, there were two smaller groups by grade band, K2, grades K to 2 and 3 to 5. This made for some really great small groups for each section. I was able to pop into the EL education sessions for both grade levels. They were fantastic. The staff were engaged. They were really enthusiastic and excited about the opportunity. I had the opportunity also to check in with a few of the K2 staff at the end of their session, and they were really excited by what they'd seen. So I do think we've got some very exciting weeks and months ahead in terms of the pilot and where we land with that. So looking forward to hearing from the staff as they start to dig into this. We also have, Barnstable will be sending a team of 5 staff members to a dyslexia institute that's being offered through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We applied to this institute as it would support the work we're doing around early literacy screening that you'll hear about a little bit later. The institute will provide the team with relevant research-based best practices on early literacy screening, instruction, data use for identification of students with reading difficulties, and interventions and supports for these students. It really is going to take the current handbook that we have established or developed and be able to build that out. So I'm really excited for this opportunity. We are only allowed to bring 5 people. They were quite prescriptive in terms of who are the roles that were kind of must be. So I'll be participating, as will Eric Brunage as the Director of Special Education. They asked for a building administrator. So we have Darnell Foley, who is the Assistant Principal at Centerville Elementary, a special education teacher from West Villages, Andrea Fulham, and a reading specialist from BWB, Ellen Savage. So they had very specific job roles and responsibilities that they wanted participating. And then my last item, thank you, Mo, I have a few slides. This is a follow-up from a question that was asked, that Kathy had asked during the accountability presentation at the last meeting. Thank you, Mo. Specifically related to MCAS Alt. Can you go back to the first slide, Mo? Do you mind? Thank you. So the question was around does the student performance on the MCAS Alt contribute to accountability? And the answer is yes. So I was able to confirm that. So as you can see, the MCAS Alt, the Department of Education has created a scaled score equivalent for the MCAS Alt performance. So they've done this parallel so that a student, for example, who is progressing is assigned an MCAS Alt scaled score of 500. So if you think back to the discussion we had last month, there is target setting around achievement in ELA, math, and science, and that target setting is around the scaled scores. And so the scaled scores of students who take the MCAS Alt, those scaled scores are factored into the targets, our performance relative to the targets. The MCAS Alt scores also contribute to the student group accountability. So when we look at the students with disabilities, we're looking at students on IEPs who are taking the regular MCAS and students who are taking the MCAS Alt. So that is they're averaging all of those scores together to see if we meet or where we are relative to the targets. Just to give a bit more on the DESE profiles, this is the performance of our students. We have, there are actually, because it's a district look, there are 40 students taking the MCAS Alt, but 34 students within Barnstable Public Schools. Out-of-district students are included, students in out-of-district placements are included in our district data, but for Barnstable Public Schools, we have 34 students. And so this graph just shows the breakdown of progressing, and that was the scaled score of 500. And then emerging, so you can see the breakdown of students at the various achievement based on their MCAS Alts. And just as a reminder, so the MCAS Alt is a portfolio assessment. So students, the teachers will pull together a demonstration of students' progress on the various standards, and that portfolio is sent to the Department of Education and scored against a rubric, and they determine whether it's identified as progressing, emerging, awareness, and incomplete cases. And then in terms of by grade level, we have probably between 2 to 7 students at the tested grade levels for the MCAS Alt. So that would be grades 3 through grade 10, not including grade 9.
So do you have the revised data that takes the students with disabilities with the portfolio numbers removed? That would be something to look at. So trying to determine where the students with disabilities category and what their MCAS levels are towards meeting the regular standards, not using the MCAS alt. Because if you're on MCAS alt, you're not earning a diploma. So those numbers that remove the MCAS alt from the students with disabilities would be key numbers to look at to help guide curriculum and instruction.
So just, I want to make sure I understand your question. So you're asking about the average performance, our targets for students
With disabilities.
but removing the MCAS alts from that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had all the slides with all the different breakdowns.
Right.
But the students with disabilities category included both regular MCAS and the MCAS.
Yes, that's.
So if those numbers should be separated out, because typically the MCAS alt portfolios are students who are not working towards earning a diploma, correct?
Yes, but I just want to, the accountability, our accountability does include the MCAS
Right.
alt. So we can look at the numbers, we can disaggregate the data and pull those out. It wouldn't change our accountability.
Right.
Okay.
I'm more concerned, not with accountability, but overall achievement of these students, so that we can make sure that they become productive citizens when they're finished at Barnstable Public Schools, and can achieve their goals of either further education or entering work. That's a nice, that's a better way, I think, to look at those numbers, because they're receiving the same types of instruction for the most part in line with meeting the typical MCAS standards. The MCAS alt, unless it's changed, I believe it pulls one or two, a few strands.
Standards, yeah.
And so you're looking at a much narrower accountability, whereas students with disabilities who are taking the MCAS with or without accommodations are accountable for the entire MCAS.
And so you're asking, and again, because I think I was on the flip side of this for.
This was part of what I wanted to see.
Yeah.
But then also see how removing these impacts our students with
So
disabilities.
that we'd be looking at just our students who took the regular MCAS.
In that category. Yeah.
Got it.
Thank you, though, for remembering to provide that. Does anybody else have any questions?
Just a comment, Kristen. I thought that was a great idea when you began with that new education check-in. Terrific. I know we do a lot at the very beginning of the year, and a couple of meetings beforehand, the mentors and all that stuff. But I think this can be very valuable. So I think it's a fabulous idea. Thank you.
Jen?
I thought you were referring just to the MCAS thing, which makes my head spin. I'm still thinking about 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to have to watch the meeting again. It's just a lot. But I agree with Peter that that's fantastic, the retention, the idea of retention interviews. Actually, when I quit my last job, I wrote the management and ownership a nice letter about how if they'd only tried to retain those of us that were talented and actually had commitment to the company, they'd be in a much better spot. And so I think that that's a really mature way of handling and getting ahead of the problems that we see that are developing now when there's just miscommunication or lack thereof. And I've actually seen it in many municipalities, and not school systems, but municipalities. It's just a good management practice to check in. So thank you very much for that. It's a good decision.
It should be nice to get a follow-up and see how they felt about that. Because when you first come on board, you don't even know what to ask half the time. And it really, and then you're in the thick of it, and everybody's busy, so it makes people pause. So that should help definitely with the retention. Did you have anything else? Okay.
Thank you.
Mike, you're good? I'm good. All right, moving on to new business. Item 4.1, acceptance of the Barnstable High School Program of Studies for 2024-25. We have Principal Friedman here. Welcome, Liz.
All right, I'm on. Okay. Hi, everyone. Great to see you. So I hope you have the document, just the short document, along with the big one, just the courses that are being added and the courses that are being removed. I don't know if there's, I guess I could maybe just give a little reason for the additions and the subtractions, and then if you want more information, please let me know. The woodworking, we have, it's a really popular class, and we have not had a third level of it. So we were able to add a third level, and we're excited about that. Again, the more hands-on, the better, and it is always a very popular course. The English 4 classes, those are not taking away anything else. Those were needs from both students and staff, seeing some other opportunities for choices that students might want that would help them in terms of next steps, whether they're going career pathway, whether they're going, well, college and career pathway kind of go together, but just meeting where they might want support in one area or the other. So this is along with like the other options, so we will really have to see like how, I guess, popular these end up being to see whether they're going to run or not. So that is for the addition of the composition and literature and research and technical writing courses. We are happy that we're able to offer the Advanced Placement African American Studies course. I think, I mean, to me, it's sort of a natural in terms of offering a wide variety and being culturally responsive and having more options. I would like to continue to grow our options in terms of different ethnicities, race, et cetera, for the course opportunities. So I believe it was piloted last year. We were going to see about doing that, but we felt like we sort of had our hands full with it, so waited until it had been vetted out and are now going for it this year. So there's definitely been student interest and staff interest as well. Okay, theater tech. This is, we have been, I think they've been talking about it long before I was there. So there has been an interest, and we have had students who have regularly interned with Steve Hammett, who was here, as well as, I think, working with some of the other consultants that have come in to work on theater craft when we have plays. This is something that is a course in many schools and can be even a pathway. So we want to really see the interest, and I say that again of, we can only offer so many courses. At some point, we will have to make some decisions, but we wanted to get it in now to start drumming up and see like what is the interest of it, and what we'd want to grow around that. I personally think it would be, I mean, I just see the excitement from students again in terms of being involved at that level. It's pretty incredible. The coaching teacher and mentorship class and internship class are really an expansion of our early education classes. So you'll see in the classes that we're taking out, it is those. So it is not because we do not want to be doing it. We're actually excited about expanding it even more. We're looking on how we can diversify our pathway. And get more student interest. There certainly is interest, but it's been on early childhood. We know we were involved with the education grant. Kristen, you might have to help me. I can't remember the name of it, but about expanding our education pathway around diversifying like staff, and really saw one of the barriers is like people who might be interested in middle school or high school were not necessarily like covered in the early childhood piece of it, and there was a lot of interest. It then grew to the fact of there's people who want to do other things within schools, within schools communities, or even nonprofits or something where it may not be an actual teaching position, but it might be something else, either within the schools or within the community. So this was a way to broaden it, but still make sure that we're offering students the experience that they would need to go and, you know, start this journey of working with young people. This next one is something that is being worked on in partnership with the HYCC and our wellness coordinator and myself. I think people in the town may know better than I do about the shortage, certainly with lifeguards, and just the opportunity for young people to be able to have a lifeguarding position. and the benefits that can go along with that. So we are partnering with the HYCC, and I will be actually at my budget meeting tomorrow, so talking a little bit more about this, but of what the town feels that they could take on, but we're really working at a partnership of how we're going to work together, get the students with one of our teachers and support from them, get them to, I think it was the Y that we ended up with, but I'll have to sort of go back on that. But thinking there's interest again from students. We've seen this successful in other schools, and we live in Cape Cod. So seemed like a good thing to put in, and this would be under the wellness department. Senior sports, again, it's an additional wellness course. There is a lot of, there's always a lot of interest in our sports classes, and we have not had one for seniors. Not meaning they can't go into others, but often the younger grades will be able to get into it because we want to make sure that they have an opportunity. So we added a senior sports class. The independent living and employment skills classes are really a renaming of what, and getting more specific about the skills. This is in our transitions programs. So instead of, it just said transition skills in real world academics, this is something that the special ed department and the special ed teachers had worked on and felt was more descriptive of the skills that students are getting in those courses. So again, it's more of a change from on name and a little bit of the description as well. But they're classes that already exist. Portuguese 1, we're really excited about. This has been something that has been asked for by both native and non-native speakers. And again, thinking about the community we live in, and it's exciting that we are going to be able to start offering Portuguese 1. So you might wonder, like, are they looking for 20 more teachers? No. I mean, we're looking for some things, but no, we're not looking for that. It is, we've been very fortunate with our Spanish program, but we have a large Spanish program. And again, this is something that we feel pretty committed to. We've heard enough interest. And so because it will be a choice, we anticipate that some of those numbers will go down in some of the other languages, and Spanish, again, being one of the highest, we anticipate that will take the place. And we do have a plan for what that would look like growing out to go up to at least a Portuguese 3, if not more. The advanced placement Chinese language and culture, I cannot say enough about the small but mighty program that we have, right? And I know that before I came, I think there is a lot of community support for this program, but I know what I have seen in the short time I have been there has been pretty incredible. I just wish it was larger in terms of just all the great things that are happening in it. So this will be through the same teacher and just, again, like upping the opportunities. We have a great National Honor Society as well, so it's like there's students who really commit to it, and it gives them further opportunity to get themselves college credit. And you heard about, we are really excited about the Coast Guard program. I think, like, for me, when I think about it, like 16 in the nation, right? Like, I don't know how many of the Navy, but I know that they don't sound so, like I've been in schools where they've had them, and it's still wonderful, but we're better. Okay, sorry, no, that's not the attitude to have. No, but it's incredible, right, that and I believe we're the only one in Massachusetts, right? Even the region, okay.
Yeah, I think we were going to be the only one in New England, right?
New England.
Yeah.
So again, just exciting where we live. I will say there's always been student interest in terms of doing JROTC. Students have different ideas of what branches they want to do. I feel pretty confident that this will certainly grow. We're going to try to do a lot just in these next few weeks to drum up excitement about it. But again, knowing that often things do take a little bit of time to build up. So we're anticipating that at the same time. Before I go to does anyone want, like, me to wait before I go through the drops, or?
We can maybe wait until you're finished.
Sure,
All
sure.
right.
So the physics one, which did look a little strange to me, I will say, when I first saw it, but I talked in length with our science curriculum coordinator, and really our intro to physics is what many schools have for physics. This one was a specific one that was towards engineering that really was not filling and students didn't need in order to take the AP. So it was a very methodical reason for removing it, not because we don't think physics is important. So there still is physics being offered, but this physics course would not be. The transition skills in the real world academics is just replaced with the two that I had mentioned before. The information technology help desk, I'm going to say, I'm sorry, I actually missed this, and I was looking over because I love when we have as many internships, both inside and outside. So my only wonder, and I'm going to have to get back to people on this, I was like, how did I miss putting the reason? But is, again, just sort of the monitoring of the director of technology position is a district position, not a just high school. And I know that we have moved some things away from the innovation learning library librarian position. So I apologize that I do not have the specific reason for that. Again, it's been very small amount of students who have done it, but I will find out that reason and I can pass it along to the superintendent to let you know. And then the foundations of education and the education internship, they are not going away. They are just broadening to have a description that and some changes with the curriculum that lets students know that it really can open up to many different opportunities. And I think that is, yes, that is it.
Any questions or comments? Jen?
Yes, I just, the more I think about this JROTC thing, the better it is. Our assistant town manager here was the commanding officer at Joint Base Cape Cod Coast Guard. So, I mean, if this hasn't gone to the council yet, it certainly should as a major feather in your cap, especially when we talk about budgeting and curriculum and all the other things that have been hangups in the past. This is a really important thing, and I know you'll get support for it. So good work on that.
Thank you.
All right. Peter?
I think back to my program of studies in high school. I think it was about 2 pages. It was, and the program of study is always so impressive to me. It's one of the things the Barnstable schools can truly brag about, I believe. Always so very impressive. So glad to see Portuguese. I've been saying that for many years. That's terrific. It always just made sense to me. So many of the kids, speaking Portuguese, and I don't know how many are speaking French in Barnstable High School, but it always seemed that either conversational Portuguese or Portuguese 1 or something made a ton of sense to me. So glad to see that. I'm sad to see physics go, but your explanation made some sense to me. But you still offer an AP physics.
And the intro to physics, which is a year-long program, and what
Right.
other schools
It
might like.
prepares them.
That, along with other sciences, does prepare them, and they
Yeah.
found that students aren't taking the physics, and it's not a prerequisite, so it's been like a very low enrolled.
And how's the enrollment for AP physics? Do you know off the top of your head?
I do not know off the top of my head.
But it's
We've been able to run it. I'm just trying to think if that's one that we do in every other year.
yeah. I
Or
think you
we
do.
may- Yeah, so we're usually able to fill a class every other year. I believe that is it. And I think it has been steady.
Okay. Thank you.
Mike?
I think you hit the nail on the head for most of these classes. Having 4 kids come through, my youngest is a senior, so for the last 5 years, I've had 4 kids come through the high school, and most of these classes are actually things that my kids have talked about adding as kids. Like the woodworking, my son did woodworking 1 and 2. That was him. He works with his hands. He was like, well, I would like to take more, get more in depth, and that's just the way his brain works. One of my daughters did the early childhood pathways because that was all the offered. And I've talked about before about retention, and we talk about growing our own and all of that. That's just you got to have more classes in teaching in order to have. And like you said, one of the problems is somebody who wants to be a high school teacher isn't going to necessarily take early childhood. That isn't what they're interested in. That's so. Once again, hit the nail on the head. One of my other kids took Mandarin. and I always talk very highly about the Mandarin. As I always say, he took Mandarin 4 years at Barnstable. He went on to Bryant, took another 4 years and got a minor in it. And honestly, our Mandarin program, Bo Wu, is unbelievable. His first 3 years of college were nothing more than a review of what he learned in Barnstable High School. So, and even that, he graduated with accelerated honors or whatever it is, because it was just all a review. It just literally hit the nail on the head. Thank you very much for what you put together. It's literally what the kids in the last 5 years at least have talked about adding. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's always great to add new choices or swap them in and out, because sometimes students don't take the time to look through the program of studies. They think it's the same old thing. I did have a couple of questions. You did mention that you're having a budget meeting about the lifeguarding, and that was one of the ones that I jotted down when I was preparing. Will there be an additional fee for students to take the lifeguarding course?
No, there wouldn't be there wouldn't
Okay.
be for students.
Right, because I do
Yeah, no, there
know,
wouldn't.
I do know the YMCA is the only pool in town, and they do charge for usage across the board. So I'm sure that the budget meeting is covering what we need to do with the YMCA pool charge. And then how is this going to work with the rotating schedule, trying to coordinate? Is that another monkey wrench?
We went over that and reviewed it and looked at, especially with the schedule, right, is changed for next year. And we looked at the blocks, just sort of like we do with internship or something, where it would make the most sense to run it. So it seemed like we had it figured out, of course, until we do it, but just where, where it looked like it would really work, where it like butted against either advisory or like something where they would have enough time to go, come back. And the HYCC is partnering in terms of even like transportation if we need it, with their van. So, I mean, a lot of things to work out and talk about, but we did find a spot for it.
Okay. And then is that a full year or a half-year course?
So we talked about that as well, and I think we talked about mixing it with, I think CPR is part of life.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, but I think there was something further. Sorry, those of you who were lifeguards or know. What was it? It might have been advanced life-saving, and the reason is next year we're not going to have as many semester courses. We don't really have any now. We're going to start having more. The following year, we hope to have more semester courses, and then it would make sense to so we were going to mix it with something because they wouldn't necessarily have a match of where to go.
So you'll break it into two?
Well, it'll be one. Next year it would be one, but they would get some additional skills
Okay.
in it.
Okay. And so I was interested in the independent living and the employment skills. And, I jotted questions. Then I read to what you were removing. And my only concern is that I understand separating them makes what's happening a little clearer for the students and the families. The real world academics doesn't, I'm curious, and I hope that it continues to build on students' reading comprehension, which is a skill everybody needs in life, and basic math skills, because I know that's always a tough area for those students, and concrete instruction is definitely needed in there, not just resume writing and filling out the application, but some other reading comprehension with it. The advanced placement African American, the only thing I noted was that I do know that a lot of the bachelor's programs break their general education courses down, and they have different buckets. And one of those buckets is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so it's nice that this AP course is now available, because I think that's probably going to fill that bucket at many of those four-year schools.
That's great.
That specifically have that requirement. So that'll be nice for our students. But yes, and nice job on the program of studies, and should be interesting to see what they choose and don't choose. I hope that accounting goes.
Can I just add one more thing?
Mike?
The lifeguarding.
Yes.
I like the fact that we're kind of integrating with the town.
Yeah.
Because I know having two of my kids also be lifeguards. When you have 4 kids, they do kind of a little bit, somebody does something. But I know like having lifeguards, they work for the town, and like trying to get lifeguards is a huge, huge problem every summer. I mean, we have beaches that aren't open, or they're open, but they don't have lifeguards at. So to actually have it in the high school, it saves the fee for parents to take the class. And it's just, maybe we can help the town out. Like, we're giving kids skills they'll always have, and maybe we can kind of work together and help the town out, get some employees too. So excellent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We also have a need with the National Seashore needs the lifeguards too. Every
Great.
town is hurting for the lifeguards, so that should help fill that workforce need. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay, thanks.
All right. We need to remove,
Would you like a motion?
yes, take a motion to remove item 4.2 from the agenda.
No, we're going to do a motion for 4.1 to
Oh,
accept.
to accept the program of studies. Sorry.
I move to accept the Barnstable High School Program of Studies for 2024-2025 as represented in tonight's materials.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. And then could I please have a motion to remove item 4.2 from the agenda pending more information?
Do you want me to table it till next month, or do you want me to just remove it?
Yes.
What's that?
Table to next
Table.
month.
I move to table item 4.2, approved field trip to Vermont on April 9th through 12th, 2024 for Barnstable High School Visions Team student representatives.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And motion carries unanimously. Item 4.3, early literacy screening presentation. Kristen?
So during last month's meeting, in my assistant superintendent comments, I had talked a little bit about early literacy screening. This is just one piece in the whole realm of our work around early literacy. The GLEAM grant, where we're identifying high-quality instructional materials. So I just wanted to bring this information forward to the committee, and as kind of a, so that you know what we're doing around early literacy screening, but also to pave the way also for some more discussion or information in a future meeting around the GLEAM grant and our work with high-quality instructional materials. So our topics, there's a why early literacy screening, what our practices are in Barnstable, take a quick look at basic fall screening results, multi-tiered system of supports, and then looking ahead. So I think everyone here knows why it's important for early literacy screening, but there's a couple key pieces here, and in particular related to the research around early literacy skills. It's that first bullet point that when you talk about being able to read by the end of grade 3, it's just such a, it's a determinant, just use the word on the screen, of the future of our students in terms of employment, academic achievement. It really paves the way. It's just so important. We also, we have our student body, student population changes, we want to make sure that every student has access to these reading supports. We are really focused, this is particular to K-3, and it's our response to the data, the interventions, and then the last bullet, there is an amendment to regulations that has really pushed this work forward. I would like to say before I dig into the amendments to the regulation, this work actually, we have been doing this work for many, many years. I think what the regulations have done is it has helped us to clean up some things, but also add a few items which I will speak directly to. But this is a practice that I'm really proud to say we've had in place for quite some time. We've been adding assessments based on this as they become available. But what the regulation says, and this is summarized, there are 3 key pieces. We need to assess students, and we need to assess, and this is K-3 again, at least twice per year. we need to use a screening tool that's approved by the Department of Education. And then it's how do we respond to this? And by respond, it's the intervention, but also that communication with families. And I would say that that really is the place where that has been our biggest change. We would assess, we would identify students, we would provide those supports, but not necessarily involving the parent in that work. So that to me is such a huge benefit to this. And I think that, again, that's the newer piece of the practice. So looking at each of those bullets, so assessing each student's reading ability through K through 3 at least twice a year. So what we do in Barnstable and what we have been doing in Barnstable is we have been assessing students, actually K to 5, but in terms of early literacy screener, K to 3. Up until, this is the first year we've actually assessed grade 3 using the early literacy screener. Prior to, we were looking at just K2. So the regulations, we've expanded that to an additional grade level. DESE recommends, Department of Education recommends that it's at least twice per school year. And so we assess 3 times per year. That's a practice that we've been doing for quite some time. We have a fall, winter, and spring assessment window. In Barnstable, we have recognized needs of students. So kindergartners, the fall window is typically the middle to end of September. Kindergartners, we don't feel it's really a best practice to assess them that early. They're just settling in and learning the routines of school. So we actually have a late fall window, which occurs in early to mid-November. And that's when we assess our kindergarten students. For the first time, and this serves more as a baseline, the screening and identification of students will use the winter benchmark, which is coming up at the end of January. So that will be the first communication home with students or with families in intervening, because we're looking at really now that students have settled into kindergarten, they have taken the assessment for the first time. And now we're going to say, all right, now you're ready. You're doing school, and now we can really look at that data. And then our English learners, same idea. When we have newcomers, we don't feel that it's a best practice in the first weeks or months that they're in new schools and new into the country, that an early literacy screener will give us actionable data. So we have delayed their initial screening to the winter benchmark as well. The second key point from the regulations is that we're using a DESE-approved early literacy screening instrument. Barnstable uses the STAR assessment. It is approved as an early literacy screening instrument. We use multiple assessments out of STAR. One is the CBM, the curriculum-based measures. This assesses students' foundational skills. We use the early literacy assessment, and that is for students that are, I'll say, emergent readers. So just starting those key reading skills. And then the third assessment is a reading assessment, and that's for students that have started to read independently. The CBM consists of a number of subtests. As an example, letter sounds, letter names. There's a reading passage, and so it's oral reading fluency. And so that's given K3. The early literacy that's designed for our K1 students, and then reading, when we get to independent readers, that would be for students in grades 2 and 3. And so it's that kind of assessment package that provides us with information around the needs for students for some additional support. The The CBM, as I said, it's these very short one-on-one assessments. So the teacher works with the student individually. They take about 1 minute, maybe to a minute and a half for students to, again, like identify letters as they go through. They'll have a handout in front of them and they'll read the letters off. And the teacher, actually, they'll have it on their iPad, will mark, correct or incorrect as they go through. And that generates the, output of where they are in the, relative to the benchmark. The set of CBM assessments typically takes probably about 5 minutes per student. And then we look at the early literacy and the reading assessments. Those are online, and the students take those in a group setting, and they take around 10 to 20 minutes to complete. Just to give a sense of, what each assessment kind of involves and the students, how they interact with staff or technology to complete them. So as I mentioned, so here are some of the skills that are assessed through the early literacy screener. So this is specific to the CBM by grade level. So you can see that some of these skills are assessed across all grade levels. But some, it's more, so grades 2 and 3, as I said, reading comprehension, so that'll be your reading assessment. And just, again, like some of these assessments, like I said, we assess 3 times a year, but not all of those subtests, early literacy skills are assessed at every grade, at every testing across the all 3 benchmark assessments. And I did give a little detail for what some of these skills actually entail. Alphabetic knowledge being the letter names and letter sounds, phonemic awareness, how the letters work together to make the word, some sight words, and processing speed. So just for a little insight into that. And then the last part of the regulations is that piece around communication and intervention. And so in Barnstable, we worked with our reading specialists to establish the benchmarks set for students who are at risk of reading difficulties. So we took the guidance. So the Department of Education did not provide a lot of guidance in terms of defining students who are at risk of reading difficulties. So the assessment has benchmarks, and then we worked with the reading specialists who are, of course, most expert in these skills to fine tune so that that's how we, following the assessment, that's how we identify our students. We sent letters home to families on November 9th. It has to be within 30 days, which we did. And this just let families know that their child had, based on the assessment, there were some skills that we were working on. We identified the skills and then the way in which students will be supported, which could be intervention within the class, working with the teacher, either a small group or one-on-one. It could be students being pulled out and getting support from from the reading specialist, really dependent upon the skills that were identified, and looking at how we can group students together as well based on their similar skill patterns. So our fall screening data, this is, again, just a real light touch here, but the number of students across and you'll notice K is missing because that's going to be under our winter benchmark. But in grades 1, 2, and 3, we identified 62 students at grade 1, 92 at grade 2, and 35 at grade 3 in terms of families who receive letters, students who are getting targeted interventions related to the skills, the early literacy skills that they needed some additional support based on the STAR CBM results. The jump in grade 2 digging into that a little bit, we do attribute that partially to one of the criteria is the reading assessment. So that's the first time that students are taking the reading assessment, early literacy reading. And so that's going to capture a few more students. We are expecting in our winter benchmark that we will see those numbers shift. The research does show like we really want to get our students early. Grades 1 and 2, kindergarten, there you see more change, more growth in the skills, which would then result in those numbers dropping. When you get grades 1 and 2 early on, and those gaps seem to close quicker. Grade 3, it takes a little longer, so I would predict that we wouldn't see a significant drop in grade 3. That will take a little bit longer, but that's just really what the research is showing around intervening. So it just really means that with grade, we've got to hit our grade 1 and 2 early and often with support. And so what this really comes around to is this is just a really nice example of how Barnstable, our response using a multi-tiered system of supports. This is one example of how we use data to identify students, to address, using data, identify their needs, address their needs, identify those interventions that are going to directly speak to those skills for students, and then progress monitor over time to support students. And so what that, again, looks like kind of in action in Barnstable. So the targeted interventions, as I mentioned, can take place in the classroom, supported by the classroom teacher, whether it's during the regular classroom time in small groups, during the intervention blocks that are built in at the elementary schools, and then also that opportunity for reading specialists, interventionists, Title I reading teachers to work with small group or one-on-one students in a pull-out setting. Interventions really, it's time. It's that second hit of information. It's really giving students an opportunity to have another go at the skills and really continue to reinforce. I think the other piece here that I didn't emphasize enough, in terms of the parent outreach, the letters that we send home not only identify the skills and the type of interventions, what the interventions might look like, but also some resources for parents to use at home as well, and how they can support their children in letter sounds and letter names. What are some of those activities that they can do? That ties in directly with the progress monitoring. So over the course of the intervention, we progress monitor, we check in, we use mini assessments. We can use the STAR CBM subtest. We might go back and re-administer the CBM, like the letter sounds, because that's the area that we're working on. We want to see, did they make progress? And we have other quick screeners that we can use just to get a quick check. Is the intervention working? Are we seeing that progress? So that when we get to the winter, we know if you know what we're going to see. But that'll be our check to see if students are going to stay with the intervention or move on, because hopefully they're not going to need that anymore. When we progress monitor, or when we do the winter benchmark, we will be sending home a progress monitoring report to the families that received the initial letters, so that they know the progress the students have made. And again, if students are still struggling, we're going to have another set of resources that parents can use at home as well to support their students. So looking ahead, as I mentioned, the winter screening is scheduled for the end of January. So we will review the data again. We will rerun the criteria, do how many students move off, but also acknowledging we may have some new students that weren't identified before in the fall. And so we'll have a new set of students potentially that we'll be intervening with. I think tied directly to this, obviously our instructional materials and our literacy instruction is directly tied to this work. So while we might not reap the benefits of this yet as we're piloting, but again, looking ahead, anticipating that as we bring high-quality instructional materials for literacy into the district, we will have additional resources to support our learners, our families, and growth. And then, of course, professional development tied with the GLEAM grant. We have had 2, and February will be our 3rd PD session, again, with the support of the GLEAM grant, that will support high-leverage instructional practices related to literacy instruction.
Any questions or committee comments?
That was great, Kristen. Certainly, the importance of intervening if a young student isn't achieving the benchmarks, it's fabulous, and it seems like we're doing a ton of work, and that's wonderful. It seems like a lot of work. I was just sitting here thinking how we proactively identify the needs of students. For the student that does very well in these tests, do we proactively identify that, that they need something more challenging in their curriculum? Maybe you mentioned that, or I didn't catch it.
No, I didn't mention it, and thank you for bringing that up. So I will say that when students perform very highly on the STAR assessment, that is one way that they're identified for gateway services and supports. So it is definitely a place where we look at that data and students that are high achieving, and so they'll have that opportunity. But also, while we're looking at early literacy screening to catch kids before they fall behind, that's a group that we're looking at the data in that lens, but we also have our classroom teachers that are regularly looking at the data, and they are identifying students who are performing strongly and how can they, further develop that, whether it's through additional texts, more complex texts. So absolutely, thank you for asking that.
Thank you, Kristen. I do believe that reading opens so many doors, and I can't imagine being a child who struggles. If you struggle reading, how can you love reading? So catching them early and making them competent readers will enrich them for the rest of their lives. Yeah. Really, they can never be bored if you can read a book.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Or a book online. All right, moving on to item 4.4, creating a subcommittee for the purpose of completing the mid-year evaluation for the school attorney. The school committee hires the school attorney and is responsible for evaluating the school attorney. Last year, Mike Judge and I were on the subcommittee with the superintendent. We do a more informal mid-year evaluation based on the goals the school attorney created in June, July. Feels like we just did this. And she's working towards those goals, and it's a midway point before the annual evaluation. So I would appreciate a volunteer to serve on that committee.
I'll volunteer.
Peter? All right, and, I'm fine staying on it. I think it's good to have one person who was involved previously and then one new, and keep rotating it so that we have different people providing input. The superintendent, so the...
Do you want me to make the 4.4?
Yes, and the superintendent too. Go ahead, Mike.
Move to create a subcommittee for the purposes of completing the mid-year evaluation for the school attorney.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 4.5 would be the membership. Peter has volunteered. I would volunteer to remain. So Mike, if you would want to make a motion.
Move to appoint Kathy Bent and Peter Good and Sarah Hearn as members of the subcommittee for the purposes of completing the mid-year evaluation for the school attorney.
Motion, is there a second?
Is second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And we need a chair.
Peter, do you want to make the nomination, or do you want to do
Wanna
it?
be chair?
Oh, I'll certainly nominate Kathy. Since
As you
she's
did with the
already
other
been
committee.
part of the committee.
All right, so I'll,
Move to approve Kathy Bent as chair of the subcommittee for the purposes of completing the mid-year evaluation for the school attorney.
I'll second.
all right, the motion is made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
And motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 4.6, approve outside legal firm recommendation. Do you want to talk about this, or should I? All right, so we went through, had a committee that was formed to write a RFP for an outside legal counsel to supplement our in-house attorney. We had used a firm for a number of years and felt as though it was time to open up the process again, because the process hadn't occurred, at least as long as I was on school committee. So the committee met over 3 days, 4 meetings, multiple meetings, actually.
Yeah, 'cause we had some days before. Just to
Right,
set up
we
the
had about
RFP.
3 or 4 meetings to create the RFP, and then interviews, and had a recommendation that came forth from that committee. Sarah, do you want to talk about how you handled your end?
Sure. So I was happy to participate on the subcommittee, and after a review through the procurement department, want to thank Amber Patterson for all of her assistance and guidance through the procurement process. The school committee did not need to go through a procurement process. This is actually one of the exempt areas, but you had wanted to go through and see what proposals came forward. 6 proposals came forward from a variety of law firms in response to the proposal, and as a subcommittee, we interviewed 3 firms, and Merrick O'Connell LLP and Nuttall, McAvoy, and Joyce ultimately were rated as highly advantageous by the subcommittee, and are the recommended firms. They put a proposal together jointly, where Merrick O'Connell, led by attorney Mark Terry, would handle more of the contract, any outside counsel needs related to contracts, negotiations, labor. They even do some building with respect to school facilities. So that would be kind of what they would offer to handle. And then Michael Joyce is the attorney from Nuttall, McAvoy, and Joyce, who would handle any outside needs related to student services. I did, at the request of the subcommittee, conduct reference checks. I talked to 3 superintendents related to Merrick and O'Connell, specifically the work with Mark Terry, and all 3 references had longstanding relationships with the firm, and they corroborated the strengths that were presented and found to be highly advantageous by the subcommittee during the interviews and our conversations. Specifically, the availability and responsiveness, the strength of the support staff and assisting attorneys in the office, the strength that Mark personally brings as he serves as a school committee member in another community, resolving matters with minimal expense. All 3 superintendents talked about being conscientious related to the finances, professionalism and demeanor, a preventative and problem-solving approach, providing advice but understanding the decision to be that of the school committee or a school administrator as appropriate to their roles. And so they were all very, very, very complimentary of Mark's work. I also spoke with 3 assistant superintendents or directors of student services from 3 districts related to their work with Nuttall, McAvoy, and Joyce, specifically attorney Michael Joyce. Again, these references had long-term relationships with him, also corroborating the strengths that were presented during the interviews. Availability and responsiveness were mentioned by all three. The strength that he brings as a former educator himself and also as a former attorney working within the Office of Civil Rights. They also spoke about his professional demeanor, working well with both district staff as well as families during meetings when he might be in attendance, a proactive and problem-solving approach. They also mentioned him being conscientious about cost, being efficient in his work, and mindful of the legal bills. Very well received and engaging with respect to professional development that he might do with district staff. Not just citing legal references, but also using examples and stories, people feeling supported, heard, and able to ask questions, with a focus on building professional capacity. During the interview, he talked about procedures and putting kind of strong practices in place. They corroborated that with respect to his assistants developing policies, handbooks, manuals, templates for letters and forms to use to be sure they're up to date and compliant. So all 6 people that I spoke with were very, very complimentary of both Mark and Michael, and I wanted to convey that as a final piece of information for the committee to consider.
Any questions? All right, Mike, motion.
Move to approve and utilization of the services of outside counsel, specifically the legal firm of Merrick O'Connell LLP and Nuttall, McAvoy, and Joyce PC, as recommended by the subcommittee.
I'll second.
Having a motion and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
And motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. And just to be clear that I will sign letters of engagement for these services with both firms following this.
Kathy, if I could just also, I just forgot to say that, as you both brought up, but I would like to thank Amber from procurement because she did an unbelievable job. She made it so easy to, she helped us unbelievable amount, so thank you to her for helping us out.
And I should also echo those sentiments. Item 4.7, 2024-2025 School Committee Meeting Schedule. The schedule was in the board materials for tonight. Does anybody have any questions? All right.
Move to approve the 24. Oh, this is the
First
first
read,
read. That's what I was
yeah.
going to say. I didn't.
Yeah, first read.
Okay.
All right, any questions, you can relay them to Sarah or me. And that will be on next month's agenda for approval. Finance and facilities business, item 5.1, approve fiscal year 24 grants, gifts, and donations.
Move to approve FY24 grants, gifts, and donations as outlined in tonight's material.
I'll second.
Motion is made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 5.2, approve accounts payable warrant, fiscal year 24, warrant number 28.
Move to approve accounts payable warrant FY24 warrant number 28 in the amount of $232,410.56.
I'll second.
Motion is made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm opposed. Motion carries. Item 6.0, executive session. I move to go into executive session, not to reconvene an open session, to approve school committee executive session minutes of December 13, 2023, and to discuss strategy with respect to litigation. Is there a second?
Second.
This requires a roll call vote. Jen? Yes. Peter?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Open meeting is closed.